Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
Long goes 1975. A YouTuber is on the rise, reviewing games late at night and sometimes friends. But Long goes 1975.
Hey YouTube, Long Boys Post 1975, and welcome to the Wednesday vlog. Now this week I want to talk about, well, you've read the title, I want to talk about the 10 arcade games that basically defined my childhood. You know, it's weird, they're not, I don't know, kind of my favourite 10 arcade games of all time, but also the reason I say define my childhood is because in one way or another, even after I played them in the arcades, I was always determined to play them at home. Now, I have had as a child a wonderful relationship with arcades, mainly because my parents, while they never understood the fascination of attraction of them towards myself, my twin and my older brother, they knew that we loved them so much. So, you know, they went out of their way when we were kids, particularly when we were on holiday, to, you know, to let us, you know, enjoy them, to give us some money to make sure we were safe and be there, and you know, kind of, I fanned the flames of our enthusiasm for them. Now, I've mentioned these two arcades many times, but when I was a kid, I mean, I live in the West Country, and back then, not so much now, but it still, you know, still happens down, you know, down the road in the seaside town of Weston-super-Mare, but back then in the West Country, arcades were everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Weston-super-Mare was just absolutely prevalent with them, and that was a place we always got taken for like birthdays for a treat. You got to remember, really young kids at this point, for like fish and chips and to spend our birthday money on games and play in the arcades and experience all these games that we saw, you know, mentioned in computer magazines, but we had only played the home ports. So to see that, because you've got to also remember that back then, if you're of my generation, the only place you could really go to see absolute brute horsepower in a system displaying amazing graphics, amazing sounds, and other amazing capabilities such as, you know, hydraulic cabinets and stuff like that was the arcades. There were no real home systems that could replicate that power, and to some degree that was even true when you had the Mega Drive, the SNES, the Atari ST and the Amiga. The arcades, you know, I've mentioned this in a previous video a few years ago, you know, the arcades essentially these days have been killed by the powerhouse of systems we have in our homes now. Not so back then. That's what made the arcades a very special place for myself and my brothers. And before we got our first system, the Spectrum, you know, even more so, to walk into these places where normally you would just see penny pushing machines and one-armed bandits, and to see stuff like Star Wars Arcade as a child was just absolutely mind-blowing. And I think it's safe to say my absolute love of playing video games was probably born, as were my brothers, born in that moment. Now, as I said, the reason I want to talk about the 10 games that define my childhood, you know, is because these are games that simply every time I went to an arcade for years were the only ones I wanted to play. And this period, you know, when I say define my childhood, is I was born in 1975, I'm 41. So it was basically the 80s for me. That was the period when stuff really started to, you know, kick in and be impressive, and you could start to see this curve go upwards, you know. Alright, Street Fighter 2 in 1991 and stuff like that, but not really interested in stuff after that. I guess to some degree as well that it's shaped by my memories of going on holiday, you know, with my family when I was a kid, and all those happy times in summer, and like I said, getting fish and chips and stuff like that, you know, going to the seaside, playing in the sea and stuff like that. Arcades was all part and parcel of that, so it's all wrapped up in one nice little bow that makes it just a wonderful time. So that would probably be why these machines are in here. Now, I'm going to go in reverse order. Now, the thing is, quite a lot of them are Sega ones, which, well, if you're like old like me, you would expect it to be, because they were at the cusp of their game. They aren't, you know, the husk of a company they are now. They were absolutely on fire. Their stuff was head and shoulders above most of the other arcade manufacturers at the time. But that's not to say this is a Sega game. Number 9 would be Gauntlets by Atari. Right. Okay, multiple route through levels. Sometimes I do recall it just, again, they probably designed it like this just to make money. That's not to say it's not a good game, it is. And obviously on MAME and stuff like that, you don't have to worry about pumping money in all your precious 10p's, but
Yeah, I did used to get totally lost on some levels. Just could not find out where to go or what to do. Why are there slightly darker ghosts? A different shade of death, I guess. Food and health increased by a paltry 100%.
Now this was an absolute 10p sucker based on the fact that your health just continuously went down. You could pick up more health in the game, but it was just designed to rape you. It was designed to make money. It was a 4-player simultaneous or 2-player simultaneous, you know, dungeon crawler, top down, depending on the cabinet you got to play. And I've got so much nostalgia for this because, again, going back, you're going to hear these arcades so many times in this, but the machine was right at the front of the arcade we went to in Minehead, down the road from our caravan in Blue Anchor, and it had slide open doors either side, like 2 entrances, so the sound just bellowed out because this machine was loud onto the pavement, and you could hear it, you know, you could hear it like crossing the street. And the first time we went in there and we saw it, just unbelievable. Never seen a game like it. Just phrases of, you know, warriors shot the health and things like that. It just, and we were shit at it. And I saw my mum and dad were in the corner just looking at it, just going, dear God, it's robbing you of your money. You know, what's wrong with you? But it just, and again, trying to replicate the experience at home, which we did manage to do, you know, back then with the really, really good US Gold Spectrum version. But it's just, because of that, it's always had a, you know, a place in my heart. Now, number 9 would be, and this is a Sega one, would be the original Afterburner.
Oh shit! How do I barrel roll? Was that Harriers? Am I fighting Harriers? I like Harriers. I can't shoot. You're purdy. Oh. I just the missile effects. You know, there's a level of intensity to this game to all sprite scalers, particularly the shooters and stuff like Space Harrier, that is just, you know, of its time but unrivaled.
Now, pretty sure we're all familiar with Afterburner. While this is at number 9, this is not the first sprite scaler I saw, but, you know, more impressive than the one I'm going to mention later on. But, you know, it's the sequence of these games. But something else that blew me away about this, and I saw the sit-down cabinet, you know, the little kind of enclosed one. The one from Terminator 2. And, you know, and obviously it's the 80s, and Top Gun and Iron Eagle and stuff like that were just through the roof, and every kid wanted to be, you know, a pilot and stuff like that. And so Sega had their, you know, hand on the pulse with stuff like this. But what I'd seen sprite scalers before, this was just, the graphics were absolutely phenomenal. And once again, Sega knew that, but you don't, because there were stand-up cabs, but building a cab that was hydraulic for an airplane game was amazing. You know, very, very limited sort of gameplay mechanics. I mean, it's an on-rail shooter basically, but the funny thing is, most of the games in this list, there were deeper, you know, more playable games in the arcades at the time. I mean, if you look at like stuff like Mario Brothers, you know, Super Mario Brothers, that and all its secrets, these weren't that, but this is what I mean, yeah, you can call me sad as a kid, yeah, you know, like, oh, shiny fast graphics and bellowing music while you're enclosed in a cabinet, yeah, it won it for me. But yeah, another one I just always remember from my childhood is just being like, if I saw it like in Western Supermare, Biddyford, Barnstaple, all the places we used to go on holiday, Minehead, Westford Ho, I would make a beeline for it. I've never forgotten, you know, the first time I saw it and the impact, and then just for years, other games were coming out and stuff like that. You could argue were more impressive by other companies when they started to get into this sprite scaling sort of, you know, fad, no, that's too harsh a descriptive term, but it just always had, you know, that amazing soft spot for me, as did this one. Again, Sega. The next 3 are Sega. Then we take a break. Yeah, number 8 would be Shinobi. I knew it. Yeah, they got in trouble for this, I think, believe it or not, because even though it doesn't look like Spider-Man, oh, wank. Marvel had a proper problem with them basically being able to stick to walls. Oh, shit. Oh, hang on. Nice. I know, I've just got a knife, but I'm going to run at the bloke who's got rocket-propelled grenades. Now obviously Shinobi was a side-scrolling platformer, mainly a 2-tier system where you were Joe, Musashi, a ninja whose students all got stolen by the terrorist group of, is it Zeb? Zen? I don't know. Zed? never mind, that's irrelevant. But it's just ninjas were cool in the 80s, especially when you were a kid, and all that, you know, like the movies like American Ninja and stuff like that. That's a really bad example, but you know what I mean. And they were everywhere on other systems, like, the Last Ninja and stuff like that. But this was just, the combination of shuriken swords, ninja magic, rocket guns, being able to dodge opponents by going up and down on double system, which was, something Sega did a lot. Amazing bosses, nostalgia in the background, like pictures of Marilyn Monroe. It was just, and the bonus stage was just, first time I saw that, standing next to my brother, we were just like, whoa. Wow, not particularly long, not particularly hard. There are a few tricky moments. Graphically, just a looker. Still so now, if you ask me. And something else that I had to, because of my love for it, again, and my love for Sega, I had to replicate on the systems I could. And I saw there was a good port on the Spectrum by Virgin Mastertronic. My favourite port would probably be the Sega Master System. But this is just another game, and there was a hooky version of it. The arcade in Westwood Hill had quite a few hooky versions of stuff. They had a version of Black Tiger, was it? Black Dragon called Black Tiger, or it might be the other way around. I finished work, it's late. Early, but late for me. They had a hooky version of Shinobi where it wasn't made by Shinobi, it was made by Aztec. And they had a version of Splatterhouse that was called Slaughterhouse. But yeah, I just always made a B for it, for it. To me, it was just like platforming with ninjas and magic. Enough said. Now, number 7, another Sega one. Number 7, Thunderblade.
Wow, that's a lot of hardware to take out one dude in a chopper. Yeah, this, ooh, cheeky, saucy. It was one of those games, as I said. Why are you saying start mission? I'm playing. This is me playing. I'll prove it. Let's fire a missile. See? Yeah, it's just one of those games that it blew me away. It absolutely blew my tits off, but it never sort of got a decent representation at home. Just my thoughts. If you disagree, by all means, that's yours. Now, the flying into the into the screen section, again, it's just, sprites layered on top of each other, but that looks absolutely awesome.
This was another one that really impressed me. It had a cabinet, but it wasn't. It was articulated, it was gear based, it wasn't electronic apart from your screen, obviously. You move the joystick and like a helicopter, you move the chair in the other way, but it was basically a mechanical chair, not, hydraulics. But it just looked so cool. And also, the sprite scaling in it was even more impressive because you didn't just have going into the screen, you had the top down where you could fly up and down, and the stacking of sprites just blew me away. I thought I'd seen everything with Afterburner and stuff like this, and this was something else. And again, following the aerial theme, it was like, it's called Thunderblade. Obviously it's ripping off Blue Thunder in Airwolf, but mainly Blue Thunder. How it looks like Blue Thunder. And again, it got into you, didn't it? It touched that nerve where you just went, I want to be a helicopter pilot, I want to be, the bloke in Blue Thunder. It looks amazing, oh my god. And you look at all these other stand-up cabinets around it, and you would just think, what's the point, people? What's the point? I guess, like I said, again, I've got to be at this point, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, stuff like that. Easily impressed, but yeah, Thunderblade was it was something else. Number 6, absolute no-brainer. That would be, by Sega again, Outrun. Right. That's an iconic screen there. I think the version I played in the arcades, which was the hydraulic one, right, shift up, was about 50p a pop, which was a lot of money back then. But I do like my Sega sprite scalers. I wouldn't go as far as to say, look at all the traffic on the other side. This is my favourite, it's up there. That would probably still be Space Harrier. Break. Ooh, fucking hell. Frisky much, are we? I mean, the traffic does come out of nowhere and find your face really quickly. Dab, 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 dab. I like the fact that there's no barrier as well, it's just a fucking drink on the right hand side. That's not going to cause any problems, is it? What would, going 213 kilometres an hour and the road bending like this? Well, I think it's safe to say this is one of the most famous games of all time. I did a gameplay of it very recently, and I think it's also safe to say that the reason so many of these games are my faves, and I'm sure there are other people out there who have that bracket of Sega sprite scaling games that are their faves, because this was the first time we got, well, it's not true, but it's replicating it with very clever, you know, stacking of sprites and scaling them, hence sprite scaling. First time we got pseudo 3D, if you will, and Ferrari, you know, Miami racing shit, racing against, you know, just driving down the highways of America and stuff like that with absolutely fantastic music. Even as a kid, I knew the music in this was absolutely the dog's bollocks. But once again, these hydraulic cabinets, just the complete embodiment of getting the product right. And I could see that as a kid. I want to drive a Ferrari. I want the cabinet that moves. I want music blaring. You know, I want graphics that make it look like I'm driving on a highway, which, you know, think about it, I'm a kid. It was just everything, and a game I also tried to replicate on home systems. That's how much these games affected me or influenced me. But the Spectrum version was, it looked the part, but it was incredibly slow. I knew of the PC Engine version, but that was just not going to happen back then. The Master System version was my first version of it. I had at home, was truly happy with. And again, simply came back from the fact that this game in the arcades had such a massive impression on me. I had to have it. And then finally the Mega Drive version. But Outrun is got to be, you know, one of my all-time favourite games. Number 6, I might sound a bit low for it, but this is where it starts to get really difficult. Now, number 5 would be Double Dragon. Right, so isn't Tina Turner going to show up now? Wait for it. She's going to come out the elevator with a chain. I love it. Right, let's try a punch. Ow, he's punching me in the back of the head. That's just not cricket. You help his bottom left. There we go. Ow! Oh, I'll have that. Ooh! Nice. Now, obviously you got a 2-tier set. Why am I describing this game? If you watch my channel, you know about it. Isn't like the Hulk gonna bust out now or something? I do like the fact that that's clearly a beetle, and I don't know if it works in the rest of the world, but in this country, I know it's when my dad, a mechanic, you have to be very careful with the rights, or just even depicting Volkswagen cars and games. The game that was kind of the sequel to Renegade and started off, truly kicked in the whole 2-player simultaneous side-scrolling beat 'em up, where your brothers Billy and Jimmy, I had to bite my tongue then not to do the cock up from the video games. It looked absolutely brilliant and stunning for the time. There was, you know, so much character in the graphics. Your girlfriend gets nicked. You scroll from left to right. Just, I mean, like I said, it was probably the first true scrolling fighter I played in the arcades. And another reason I have nostalgia for it. I mean, I absolutely loved it back then. I loved it because, like I said, it was probably the first side-scrolling brawler I played, especially with my brother, which just made it even better. But it was right in front of the entrance where the chip shop, fish and chip shop, was tacked onto the arcade. Well, it was the same building. You would come down the door, push these double doors open and come in. It was next to the Commando machine, which didn't make this list, but Double Dragon was just the whole, you know, again, Kung Fu movies, beating the snot out of bad guys, the whole getting a crafty punch in on your brother. Fantastic. The thing about replicating this at home was it was difficult because the first game that kind of did it wasn't a Double Dragon game. Ironically, it was a sequel for the home only. That was a sequel to Renegade, the port, or in my case on the Spectrum, which obviously Renegade is kind of the original version in the arcades of this, and that was Target Renegade. And that was a fantastic version, but, you know, and it was basically the equivalent of Double Dragon. Then the Spectrum version came out, which was pants, and then I finally, from the Western Supermare, in that shop, you know, I mentioned my mum used to take us, you know, on a birthday, we had fish and chips. I spent my birthday money on the Master System version, and that to me was like playing, again, I'm a kid, playing the arcade machine that I fell in love with and just, you know, I had such a soft spot for. It's weird, I don't... maybe it's just me, or maybe that was the charm of having lower grade systems and arcade techs, unlike now, where you just had to, you know, you wanted to play at home because you couldn't always play it in the arcades and how it was expensive. And so you could see past the faults and the limitations, and, you know, it was the arcade to you. Now, number 4 would be final Sega game, I promise. Might probably know what this one is if I say it's a sprite scaler. Number 4 would be Space Harrier. Do you know what? This game came out in 1985, until look at the explosions, like mini mushroom clouds. To this day, it still blows my mind how good it looks. Yes, sprite scaling, I don't care. It's pseudo fake 3D. Maybe it's my nostalgia glasses, but I think it looks amazing. Great music, everything. Oh, the noises it makes when you shoot these guys. Da-ding, da-ding, ding, ding, ding. Sound like a country and western band. But yeah, it looks fantastic. Sega were on the bloody money when they made this, that's all I can say. Oh, saucy! Now, once again, an incredibly famous Sega cab. Many copied, tried to imitate, you know, I think it probably did kick off the true other companies, you know, scrambling to do sprite scaling. This, I do remember the first ever time I saw it in an arcade, and I think this was Western Supermare. And the first time I saw a hydraulic cabinet, because this game's from 1985, so I would have been 9 or 10. And it was just like, holy shit. It's got a chair that I sit in that moves, and look at it. It's dragons and, you know, and tech flying at you unbelievably quickly when you fly around the screen with a bazooka under your arm, blowing their tits off. Again, with absolutely amazing, amazing music. This like unlike any other games, because this is probably far superior to the 3 I got above it, but that comes into the love of their source material, which makes a big deal when you're a kid. But you'll get to that in a minute. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, Space Harrier was just, I've never been that blown away in an arcade in my life, and it, you know, again, had to replicate it at home, thinking that I never, you know, really could. And I do remember that there is, and I got a video of it, an absolutely amazing version on the ZX Spectrum where it, you know, crude graphics or not, it really does nail it. And that wanting to, you know, experience this at home, that game really does punch above its weight and just show absolute, you know, like understanding the source material and getting it across on an inferior system. Now, this is where it might surprise you what my top 3 are, because even when I had to sit down and write the list, but it's the nostalgia I have and the excitement I had at the time because of the source material, when knowing that there were games of these in the arcades. So number 3 would be Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. We've got all the kids, we can leave. You can actually leave without getting all the kids, but yeah. Saving grace is, even though the difficulty will keep ramping up, they're thick bastards, which you would expect from cult members. Right, let's go. Okay, so you're forward, speed up, speed back, lean. You can whip. You lean changes the route you're going, which you have to do because, all right, that stops them killing me. If the cart catches up, get it? Right, is he gonna come down? And it will hit you at this point here and kill you. Right. Now, as I said, compared to the other games on here, you know, this is incredibly simplistic, incredibly limited. I mean, it's all right looking, but you've got to remember, when I was a kid, it's basically a 3-stage game. You know, rescue the kids by going around up and down ladders and stuff like that. You know, go for a minecart, get the Sankara stone, and then fight all around on the bridge. You know, not massively deep, balls horrifically hard, but it was just, imagine Ickle, you know, 8-year-old Dave, who just seen Temple of Doom, just seen it, and was absolutely blown away and walked, no, nothing. You know, why would they make a video game of a movie? Obviously, I didn't understand how things worked back then. And walking into an arcade and seeing this with sampled voices, you know, which are crude now, but to me back then sounded just like, you know, they were Harrison Ford, but they're crude, just like Harrison Ford. John Williams' soundtrack was sampled, and it's just like, holy shit. Again, kid eyes, people. I'm looking at the movie Indiana Jones on a screen in an arcade, and that, I never got over that as a kid. That just blew my mind. And again, the minute I found out that there was a way to replicate this at home, which was the US Gold port on the Spectrum, which is actually quite good. Again, I've got a video of that. I was on it. But yeah, it just, like I said, I can't explain it. Seeing a movie that was fresh in your mind and blew you away, you know, suddenly show up in your arcade as a game, sounding like it and looking like it, was just something else. Now, number 2 The next one is a movie again, and that would be, and this is probably going to make you think, how is this your number 2? Again, it's what it did to me seeing it in an arcade, but number 2 would be Return of the Jedi by Atari. Now, I find it so hard to, like, kind of judge. Oh, I really don't need you behind me shooting. Judge the sort of positions of the trees. And you've got to keep moving because these little twats just keep shooting at you. And for some reason they just bounce off. Ooh, nice. They just bounce off the trees, whereas I face plant into them and it hurts. Ooh. Shit. I can't believe that. I absolutely can't believe that. I've probably got some adrenaline going. Right, Death Star, or I can see ATST, it's Death Star. Again, I'm worried that they're gonna, yeah, see? Shoot at me from behind. Welcome to the cool side of the pillow, Peter. Oh, fuck you. Now, arguably, this is the weakest in the original 3 Atari games. Atari, Star Wars Arcade. Then there was this in '83, because the Empire Strikes Back one was actually an expansion kit that you put on the original Star Wars trilogy. But again, Return of the Jedi, just seen it. I mean, this came out the same year. I think Indiana Jones was a year later. This came out the same year, and it was literally, we saw Return of the Jedi in the cinema on a rainy day in Minehead, as we did Indiana Jones, although that would have been a year before the game came out, so maybe that was another reason why I was so excited to see this. But yeah, it's Return of the Jedi, and I had already played Star Wars game at this point, but we'll get to that, and I just went, oh, it's isometric this time, not, vector, just like, holy shit, well, I'm Mickle Dave, holy, what do you say when you're a kid, Schneidis? Never mind, it's Return of the Jedi. And it was the way it jumped between, you had Vader's voice sampled, the way it jumped between stages to replicate the how they did the battles in the movies and stuff like that. And I was terrible at it. I don't think I ever got past the Scout Walker stage. But again, seeing a movie on the screen in the arcades just, lit me up as a kid, and that's why, from looking back at the sheer amount of excitement through this list, why it was number 2. Again, there's no logic in this other than sheer excitement when I was a kid. But number 1, I kind of gave it away with my statement on that last one. Number 1 is the original Atari Star Wars Arcade. Right, trench. Shit. I wish I could play this on a yoke. This centering stuff is really doing my tits in. Have I shot any of these things yet? Right, so where's the tray? Well, here we go. Hammer in the middle, hammer in the middle. I remember that from being a kid. Did I get it? That's a great shot, by the way. That's a great shot. That totally reminds me of being a kid. Ooh, I've still got 8 shields. I have no idea how that happened. Ain't gonna last long, is it? Wow. I can't shoot. Oh, I shot 1. 2. Don't I get the towers now, or do I get the shit on the floor, then the towers is the next time? Hey, was that Darth? TIE Fighter? Obviously, this actually came out in 1983, didn't it? So Jedi came out the same year the game did, that would be, because this came out, Star Wars came out the same year as the Jedi movie. Weird crossover stuff there. This one is number 1 for an absolute simple reason, and it was in an arcade down the road on the seafront from our caravan in Blue Anchor, and I knew nothing of it. Sit-in cabinet, not full sit-down hydraulic cabinet, it was 2 years before Space Harrier. And it was vector graphics, but you had the wonderful art on the outside. You got in, it felt like you were sat in an X-Wing. You had that amazing yoke. The yoke was on Jedi as well, but obviously that was an isometric 3D game, so it wasn't, as impactful on you. Yeah, and sitting in this with the speakers, you could hear samples of Obi-Wan, Vader, Han Solo and stuff like that, and the fact that you were looking into the screen, you had your full gun turrets. It's someone who, you know, adored Star Wars. This machine blew my face off for the first time I saw it. The outside of the cabinet, the sound effects, sitting in it, the ambience, your brothers leaning in both sides and looking at the screen, the yoke, flying into the trenches. It blew my face off. I had to literally get out of the cockpit, go and pick up my face and slap it back on. This is my number one arcade game of my childhood, the most, you know, the one that's impacted me the most and had the biggest influence on me, because no game ever to this day, you know, even like seeing Ridge Racer later when you saw, you know, 3D graphics properly kicked in with like Virtua Fighter. Granted, I was, you know, a teenager, maybe early 20s then, and obviously at this time as a kid and being a Star Wars fan, it was something else, but nothing has ever quite simply blown me away like this, and that is why it is my favourite arcade game of all time, and, you know, the most influential one of me, or for me, when I was a kid. And, you know, I can't explain it. I can't, you know, if I still see one of those Star Wars caps, I still get excited. Anyway, these were my top 10, you know, most influential arcade games of all time. What are yours? Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later.